All right, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to be going over the brand new Pickle Pro skins. These got put up for pre-order about a month ago, but they are finally starting to ship. And in this video, I'm going to give you my first look impressions on what I think of them. If you aren't already familiar with what this concept is, Pickle created these skins that you can put over top of their paddles that allow you to refresh your grit. This is a very common problem in pickleball where the more you use the paddle, the grit just wears down and you start getting less spin. So the idea of these skins is that once it wears down, you can replace it for very cheap. Each set of skins from Pickle is only $20. So if after a month of play you decide you're not getting enough spin anymore, you could just slap one of these skins on to refresh your grit. Now before we get into the skins, I do just want to give a brief background on the company because there's probably a lot of you who don't know who these guys are. Pickle is a relatively new company, but they have signed 3 established pros. They have Krista Getcheva, Gabe Tardio, and Hurricane Tyra Black. After signing Hurricane Tyra Black, they actually came out with a signature paddle for her, which is the Hurricane Pro that comes in a 14 and 16 millimeter. And then the other paddle that they offer is the Vantage Pro, which is what Gabe Tardio uses, and they also offer that in a 14 and 16 millimeter. They offer skins for all of these paddles, so no matter which one you choose, you can refresh the grit on them. The paddles themselves are very reasonably priced. The Vantage Pro is priced at $139.99, and then the Hurricane Pro is at $159.99. However, they are going to run a promo once this video launches for 15 days, where if you use code PBStudioVP for the Vantage Pro, you can get it for $99 with a free set of skins. And if you use code PBStudioHP, you'll be able to get the Hurricane Pro for $139.99 with a set of free skins. After those 15 days, code PBStudio will get you a free set of skins with any order. All right, so now for the rest of the video, I'm just going to answer a lot of common questions I have seen since these skins were announced. The first big question is, are these even legal? And yes, they are officially legal. At the start of this year, USAP changed some of their wording to allow replaceable face skins on their paddles. The 2 most notable companies who have been working on this are Pickle and Reload. Reload has not currently hit the market yet, but I believe they're not very far from releasing. Now, the main catch with this is that the skins are only approved for that company's paddles. So you can only use the Pickle skins on a Pickle paddle, and whenever Reload launches, you can only use the Reload skins on a Reload paddle. I think both companies probably want this to change in the future and be able to license this out to other companies. But at the moment, that's not how it works, so we'll have to see where that goes. So yes, these are legal, but only for each company's paddles that they were approved with. When they submit the paddle, they now submit the skins with it to have both of those things approved together. The next common question I got is, how many RPMs do these get? At the moment, it's averaging about 1850 RPM. I tested 3 different paddles with 3 different sets of skins, and on the low range, I got 1840, and on the high range, I got about 1883. Now, while there are elite paddles out there starting to hit the 2100, 2200, and 2300 benchmarks, what I do think is interesting about this is how consistent the face is. I also took my Stare-It and tested each set of skins to see how consistent the face was, and on every single one of them, they were right up at the legal limit. There wasn't a huge variance where it was way over and then some were way under. They were literally all identical. So the consistency of these is pretty impressive, especially given the fact that right now, Yola is dealing with issues where one side of the paddle, it's really gritty, and one side it's really gritty, or both sides are gritty, or no sides are gritty. Raw carbon fiber has been known to be very inconsistent, and the larger the company is, the more that issue seems to scale as a problem. So it's nice to see that with these skins, they've managed to find a way to make that very consistent, even if right now the RPMs are not as high as a regular paddle. Now, on that note, 1800 is still plenty acceptable. I think if you are used to some of those elite paddles, going down is noticeable. I found for me on most shots, I wasn't having any issues, but dinking, it was a little bit more noticeable how much the ball was grabbing versus some of the new Yolas, which are hitting some crazy numbers. Now, the other thing is that I know Pickle is already working on the version 2 of these skins. They are fully aware that these are not at peak performance, especially for their pros. So they're already working on another set of skins that should cross that 2,000 plus threshold. I don't know exactly when those are going to be launching, but they do believe it's going to be possible to get to that level. So it probably won't be long before the RPMs of these skins are matching the elite paddles. Next question was, how much do the skins weigh? Each skin weighs about 0.3 ounces, so if you put one on both sides of the paddle, which of course you're going to do, you will be adding 0.6 ounces to your paddle, which is a pretty substantial amount of weight. And this does also have a pretty good impact on the swing weight and twist weight of the paddle. The Hurricane Pro 16mm comes in at a swing weight of about 108, and after applying the skins, mine went up to 119. And then the Hurricane Pro 14mm, mine came in at 106, and after the skins, the swing weight went up to 116. My Vantage Pro 16mm came in at a swing weight of 120 stock, and after the skins, went up to 129. The Vantage Pro 14mm came in at 114 swing weight, and then with the skins went up to 123. So on average, it's increasing the swing weight by about 9 to 10 points, which shouldn't be taken lightly because that's actually a very, very noticeable increase in swing weight. So the first downside that I'm noticing to these skins is that it's pretty apparent that the paddles were developed first and then the skins later to be added to the paddles. Because if you buy one of these paddles and you like it at a swing weight of 108, and now you want to refresh your grit, well, you're going to have to get used to playing with a much heavier paddle. I played them stock and with the skins, and while I really didn't mind it at a swing weight of 119 on the Hurricane Pro 16mm, that is a lot heavier than most standard shaped paddles usually are. So if you like the low swing weight of a standard shaped paddle, then the skins might be a bit of a turnoff because they might just be a little bit too heavy. Now that doesn't mean all of you are going to feel that way. I still think that the Hurricane Pro swing weights are not that bad. They're pretty manageable. However, the Vantage Pro swing weights for a lot of people are going to be too heavy. I played 2 games with the Vantage Pro 16mm at a swing weight of 129 with the skins, and it was just way too much for me. My wrist was starting to have some small pains while playing, and it was just too much. There's no way I could consistently play with that, and I think a lot of people out there probably wouldn't. Some of you would be fine with it, but I think most of you, that's just too heavy. Now, I did ask the team at Pickle about this, and they did say in the future they are going to be trying to cut down the weight of the skins and also build their paddles from the ground up to include the skins, so that way you're not having this discrepancy in stock form and then with the skins. When you buy it, hopefully in the future, you're just buying it with the skin, and that's how it was meant to be played, which is why I say that the skins feel like an afterthought from the original paddle. Now the twist weight does actually improve a decent amount with the skins. My Hurricane Pro 16mm went from 6.71 to 7.15 after adding the skins. And if you want to see the rest of the stats, you can see those on screen now. All right, now I kind of already talked about this in the beginning, but are these legal for other paddles? And the answer is no. Okay, we're gonna try and put this on a weighh and see how it fits. Actually, okay, the top shape's not gonna quite fit. Okay, so you would have to snip this to make, like if I lay it, it's too sharp up here to fit, and then it goes down too far, but like, and if you cut that, it would fit, but it's technically not legal, so there's no reason to do this, but it could work if you really wanted it to work, but we'll put it on the proper paddle. Next question is it hard to apply these? I actually got quite a few questions that were saying, I'm really bad at applying phone screen protectors. Am I gonna have a hard time with this? And the answer is no. Anyone should be able to do this very easily. I am horrible at arts and crafts related things, including putting on a screen protector on my phone. And I was able to do this first try in like 5 to 10 seconds. It's extremely easy to line up. Even if you screw it up a little bit, you can pull the sheet back up and then put it down. But honestly, I don't know how you could screw it up putting this on because it's really just that easy. All right, next, is it easy to take the sheet off? And no, I wouldn't really say it's easy. So I had a play session where I wanted to take the skin off to play with it stock, and I don't have very big fingernails, and that might have been part of my problem here, but it actually did take me, probably a minute and a half to get my fingernail underneath and then pull it off. Of course, your mileage may vary, but that's about how long it took me. And then I also did decide to do a torture test on these skins because a lot of you live in warmer climates, or you leave your paddles in your car, or you leave your paddle on a hot court during a timeout. So I took one of my paddles and I stuck it in my car on the dashboard and then left it there for about an hour. And when I came back, the skin was actually peeling up. Now, what's interesting is I took the paddle and I just smoothed it out and then it went right back to normal. It was stuck to the face, had no problem. I went and played with it. It didn't come up. And then I did one more torture test where I left it in the car for an hour. And again, the skin came up, but I was able to press it down. And then I went and played with it again, and it still didn't come up during play. So it does seem that if you leave it in hot temperatures, it is going to come unstuck from the face, but it seems easy enough to just press it back down and then there's no issues after that. I've taken these skins on and off these paddles a number of times to test them stock and then play with them, and they keep sticking to the paddle. I don't know how many times you can do this and effectively get away with it, but also for most of you, you're not going to be peeling these off and then putting the same one back on over and over. I'm just doing that to see if it holds up, I guess. So just know that in hot environments, it does seem to have a bit of an issue, but it also seems to stick right back to the paddle with no issue. The next question is, what are the RPMs of a new raw carbon fiber paddle versus a worn out one versus the skins? Now, this one is a little hard to give you guys hard data on because it depends on the environment you play in, how often you play, how hard do you play, what paddle are you using. There's a lot of things that make this vary. I have only really done data points on about 2 paddles that I can give you what I have experienced. So my Gearbox Pro Power, I used that for about 3 months. When it was brand new, I was getting mid 2000 RPMs. And then after 3 months, I was getting right around 1800 RPM. My 6.0 double black diamond that I used for 6+ months when it was brand new was about 1900 to 2000 RPM. And then after those 6 months, I was probably in the low 1600 range. So if I were to put a pickle skin on top of that, I would get a boost of spin, but it wouldn't go quite back to what it was brand new, especially if you're comparing it to some of these more elite paddles in terms of spin, like the weighh Forza Mach 2 was like 2100 RPM. Right now, with the current skins that exist, you're not getting quite back to that level of spin. So hopefully that helps answer what some of the differences are, but just know that it's gonna vary from person to person. While in 6 months, mine was 1600 RPM, yours could be lower, or you might still have more depending on how frequently you play. All right, so now I'm just gonna go over the paddles and explain to you guys how these play. These are Gen 2 thermoformed paddles that I would say play a little bit on the softer side. I would say they're more of an all-court paddle or just slightly below an all-court paddle, which kind of depends on if you're choosing the 14mm or the 16mm. The Hurricane Pro, I think, is most comparable to a weighh Forza Mach 2. While I haven't gotten extensive time to compare them side by side, I did have one evening of playtesting, and I would put them both in a very similar category. I think there are going to be subtle differences in the level of pop or certain feel, but generally speaking, I think they're very comparable paddles, except that the Hurricane Pro is technically a little bit cheaper than the weighh. Now, something else I did observe is the paddle plays slightly different with the skin and without. Of course, it's going to swing a little bit slower, but it actually felt slightly different. I felt that I was getting a little bit less pop off of the face, and the feel was slightly more subdued or muted than when the paddle was completely stock. Now again, if the paddle came with the skins this way and I never got to experience it stock, wouldn't matter at all. But again, if you get used to that stock feel and then have to get used to the skin, it might be a little annoying. Personally, for me, this wasn't an issue. It was just a different feel, not a bad feel. So the paddles are good and they're being sold at a good price, but they aren't anything new or absolutely mind-blowing like a Gearbox Pro Power or the Yolas or some of these other paddles that are using newer technologies. I think the value proposition is there. Just know that it's not anything new. All right, one other question was, is there any residue that comes off of the skin? And again, I left these in the heat. I kept taking them on and off and reapplying, and no, there was never any residue left on my paddle. However, this has been being tested over the last maybe 3 or 4 days, so just know that your mileage may vary. Maybe if it was in really cold temperatures and then really hot temperatures, and doing that repeatedly and then playing, maybe it'll leave some residue, but in my experience with what I would say is a decent torture test, there was no residue, which was really nice to see. Just know that it's not a guarantee that you won't experience that. These just haven't been on the market long enough for us to really know. So here's my current thoughts on these skins. First, I think the skins need to be built from the ground up with a paddle so that the swing weights are manageable. The Hurricane Pro, those swing weights are manageable even with the skins. However, if you're used to that low swing weight from a standard paddle, you might not be happy about it. For their elongated Vantage Pro, I personally think the swing weights are just a little bit too high and most people are going to be uncomfortable with those. So right now, the skins are better used on the Hurricane Pro than they are the Vantage Pro. So in the future, if they build these from the ground up to have a reasonable swing weight out of the box, then I think that'll be great for everyone. But it will be a little disappointing if you get used to that low swing weight and then have to go up to use the skins. Also, they will have to get the RPMs up. While personally, I didn't have any complaints on the court while I was playtesting these, except for maybe on dinks and rolls, it was a little noticeable compared to the high tier paddles. I do think they're gonna have to get those numbers up if they want to be really competitive with some of the best paddles, which it sounds like they're already working on it. So I'm sure that will come, but just know that right now you're not gonna get the top of the line RPMs out of these current skins from Pickle. I can definitely see a place where in the future, these are normal for pickleball. Right now, the current solutions for grit are honestly just kind of pathetic. You have companies right now like Selkirk who are still charging very high prices and using paint grit on their paddles, which wears out in a mere few weeks, or if you're really lucky, maybe a month. And then raw carbon fiber might be a month to 3 months, depending on how you play, before it's degraded to a point that's really annoying. And it really doesn't make sense to throw away a perfectly good pickleball paddle just because the grit wore down. Like, would you really throw away your car just because the rubber on your tires wore down? No. That would be ridiculous, and I don't think it should be that way in pickleball. So the potential and future of these is very high, but the first iteration of these still leaves something to be desired. So I'm optimistic for the future of skins in pickleball, but right now it's still going to need some work before you convince the mass market that it's better overall. So there you guys go. That's my first look on the Pickle Pro skins. I'm excited for the future of these, but right now I think there's still more work to be done. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.